It's Sports by the Book at the South Point Studio. Here's Jeff Parles.
Welcome in. Sports by the Book is the show. I'm Jeff Parles. Alex White is here. And look who is here right out of the gate. Jimmy, hop on in. Come on in. Microphone's there right for you.
Am I allowed to talk?
Please, right into the microphone now.
I'd rather talk to her.
That's fine. You can talk to Alex for sure, but
Hello,
as long
guys.
as it's into the microphone.
Quickly, I want to, so you guys can talk about the rest of the day. Here we have a ticket on the Browns for $20,000. What did he lay on that? He laid 1.5. Right?
Yep.
Okay, what was the opening line on that game?
So
What was the opening line on that game?
the opening line was Jacksonville -3 before the
That's the reason I stopped in,
Yeah.
because you have to be careful when you're betting now, because what will happen because of the situations, the injuries, everything else, these games lose 4 or 5 points. And sometimes what we get, which is not fair to us, like a guy run up and say, "Hey, Jimmy, I didn't know it was like laying, 3, I was taking 2. You have to look and be careful in the last few weeks because the injuries take over. And you see there's probably 8 games with a minimum of 2-point differences than they were. So that's the racket you're into, guys. So I just want to tell you, have a good day, have a lot of fun. And, again, the guy bet 20. He laid 1.5. He could have taken 3 for his lungs, 4 days ago. So, all right, kid, take it easy.
Thank you,
Jimmy, thank you very much, as always. And that's actually a perfect place to start out of the gate. That Browns-Jaguars game, of course, a big bet taken on the Browns at 1.5. Injury circumstances, as we know, big in that one. Trevor Lawrence going to play. He's in. He's going to play with that high ankle sprain he suffered 6 days ago, Alex. And all I'm going to tell you is this is an injury that usually wipes you out for a minimum of 2 weeks, sometimes as long as 6 weeks. It's been 6 days. And Trevor Lawrence, who is a player, high-end quarterback, as we know, who part of the reason he is as good as he is because of his mobility. And he's playing on 6 days after that injury against this defense in that building where they are the best defense in the NFL when they're at home, Alex. It's 1.5 right now, or excuse me, up to 2 now on Cleveland, back to 2. Peaked at Cleveland 3.5. Other way was Jacksonville 3. That was previous before the Lawrence injury happened on Monday night. Chris reopened it at -3 on Cleveland after Trevor Lawrence's injury in that loss to Cincinnati. I'm not going to touch this. All I will say is this feels like a pretty ridiculous spot to throw Trevor Lawrence back in right away 6 days after a high ankle sprain.
I completely agree. He's very tough, though. He hasn't missed a game, high school, college, or pro for injury. So we're seeing him step up here again. But I didn't touch it either. Too many question marks. We don't even really know who we're getting at quarterback for the Browns. Joe Flacco, I believe, or is it Dorian Thompson-Robinson? I don't know. Too many question marks. I do think this will be a close game. I don't hate teasing either side. So now, of course, you would tease the Jags up, getting more points. But both of these teams have played close games. Cleveland's last 6 lost to the Seahawks. Then they shut out the Cards. So besides that one, but they beat the Ravens by 2, beat the Steelers by 3, and then lost to the Broncos and Rams. So we have seen their defense slip up a little bit, but you mentioned it, Jeff, not really at home, allowing 20.2 points a game, but you can cut that in half at home, only allowing 10.1.
So the Browns, I'm happy you brought up the Cleveland end of this. Cleveland still hasn't announced the quarterback. It's 12:03 on the East Coast. The game kicks off in less than an hour. The expectation, Ian Rappaport of NFL Network reporting earlier this morning, that the expectation is that it's Matt Nevert's guy, Joe Flacco, who's getting the start today, who I'll be frank with this. It's totally ridiculous that Flacco is actually starting for a team that has a chance to make the playoffs. And what's even more ridiculous is it's 100% the correct move. And look, I think DTR has the potential to be at least a reasonable backup in this league. This is the type of game against Jacksonville. You just saw Jake Browning annihilate that defense. If you get Flacco time for the Browns, by the way, Denzel Ward's also out as well for Cleveland in this game. I actually think Flacco can cook a little bit in this one. Now, it's a weird game from the betting perspective, as Jimmy mentioned, because of the way this game opened when Lawrence was still not hurt. Kind of have to, at least to me, look at this game a little bit differently with Trevor Lawrence now back in. the question mark comes into, Alex, is a 60% Trevor Lawrence better than a 100% CJ Beathard? And the fact that I don't know the answer to that kind of makes me say, even though it's, again, it's not the worst of it, but it sure ain't the best of it. Tread carefully, but if you made me take it even with the bad number out there, I think I would lay Cleveland money line, but I'm staying out of this game.
Completely agree.
Let's go to the next one. The weather in Baltimore is not going to be good today.
No.
Not going to be good today. You know, the I-95 corridor just really brutal all the way around, even though I will say it'll get better as the day goes along at least. It's warm. Matt Nevert's an East Coast guy also. He knows that 60 degrees in December in the I-95 corridor is really nice. Problem is there's a 100% chance of rain in this game for the Ravens. Now, they host the Rams. It's 7.5 behind us, total 42. Puka Nacua was questionable whole week. He's didn't even have an injury designation going into this one, so not much of a shock that he's going to play. Of course, Mark Andrews still on the sidelines for the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens have just demolished NFC teams at home. The 2 wins by 30+ against Seattle and Detroit earlier in the year. We had this discussion on Friday on the show, Chris Andrews and Vinny Magliulo and I. Normally, it's not precipitation. It's wind that impacts these games. But if there are 2 teams in the league, one, and they're both playing outside today, that I do think are impacted in a big way by precipitation, and they obviously are linked forever because of that trade. One of them is Detroit, and the other one is this Rams team. I am concerned about them going on the road in the slop today in Baltimore and being competitive in this one. I'm not touching because I missed the 7 earlier in the week on Baltimore. I think that was pretty good. Now it's 7 the hook. Don't feel like forcing the action, but again, this would be a lean to Baltimore at the current numbers.
Love Baltimore. I actually did lay the 7 with them during the week. Good. If I was giving it out now, I would say this is a great teaser leg. Tease Baltimore down here, or first half, they're -4. I mentioned this on Thursday. The Rams have 6 wins, and 4 of those are against the Seahawks and against the Cardinals. So they're really good against their division opponents, but we haven't seen them do too much other than that. They beat up on really bad teams, and then they can't compete. I mean, we saw them 5 weeks ago in Dallas. They lost that one 43-20. Of course, Matthew Stafford was injured during that game, but that game was over far before his injury. And then we have this Ravens defense that's really good. First in points allowed, just 15.6. Second in allowed yards per game. And they're giving up the fewest rushing touchdowns at 4, fewest passing touchdowns at 10. This team is really good, and nobody is talking about them. Everybody's still trying to figure out who's the AFC team to beat, and they're right here in front of you. It's the Baltimore Ravens.
You know, I said this on Friday. I don't know what it is with the Ravens. I just don't fully.
You're not alone.
I don't fully trust them. I just don't. That Andrews injury, we've seen, and again, granted, they've only played 1 full game without Andrews, and it was an ugly game that the Chargers chargered in more than anything in that game in L.A. 2 weeks ago. They had the bye last week. But it's all for the taking for Baltimore. The number 1 seed is in their grasp. They have a home game against Miami in Week 17 as well. They're a game clear of KC and Jacksonville. By the way, Jacksonville plays Baltimore on Sunday night next week in Duval. So that, hopefully, again, that's part of the reason also I think I would have sat Lawrence today, get him fully ready for that game. You may not even win this Cleveland game with a 60% Trevor Lawrence anyway against the Browns.
Well,
but
quick note on that.
Please.
While the Mark Andrews injury is significant to this team, we saw in the 7 quarters without him, he's used his other targets more. Zay Flowers. He has Odell Beckham Jr., who's had 11 targets since then, and Isaiah Likely at tight end, who brings a different dynamic, speed, and elusiveness in that tight end spot. So I think they'll be just fine. I really, as you can tell, I'm very high on this Ravens team.
Yeah, they're going to win that division now because the Steelers have imploded. Sorry, Sean. The Bengals still have Jake Browning at quarterback. Don't know how sustainable that is, despite that brilliant performance on Monday. And they have a 2-game lead on Cleveland. So I don't see Baltimore blowing a 2-game lead to anyone in that division with the way those teams are at the moment. But again, playoffs are a different game as we've seen in the Lamar Jackson era. All right, let's go to Chicago. Our guy Ryan McCormick actually in New York this week, so we can't even get Ryan's take on this game between the Lions and the Bears. It's down to 3. Okay, we'll get to what Shaw just said in a second. So it opened 4, bet all the way down to 3. At the current number, I can't touch this. I don't want it. The Bears should have beat the Lions 3 weeks ago. They should have won in Detroit. They choked that game away in the last 4 minutes of the game. There are significant home road splits with the Lions, and especially home road splits with Jared Goff when the temperature gets under 40 degrees. Now, 40 degrees in Chicago on December 10th is pretty darn good. It's a high of 36, wind only 10 miles an hour. That's not bad for the second Sunday in December in Chicago. But we've seen this Lion team, forget the offense. We've seen that defense implode the last month. And that's what I'm concerned about more than anything. I'm not touching this. I wouldn't be shocked the Bears win this game outright. Now, with Detroit, if they put it all together, they're much better than this Bear team. We know this. But that Detroit defense, and I think I'm being echoed in the market because that total has been bopped all the way all over the place this week. Open 45, got as low as 40.5, and now back to basically the opener at 44.5. I actually thought the opening number was right, Alex. So those early numbers earlier in the week when it was bopped down, if you got those, right. Job well done on the over.
Right, so people were kind of overreacting to weather early in the week, and now we're finding out which games are really going to see the most wind. But I completely agree with you, Jeff. The Bears were the better team for most of that game in this first matchup.
56 minutes of it.
56 minutes of it, and those 2 touchdowns by the Lions got us to that over. I was looking at the over here, but I didn't play anything. I also agree with you. If you got the 3.5 or the 4 with the Bears, that's the right side. Big revenge game for them. And Justin Fields has improved, since his first year in the league. So he is now up to completing 64.4% of his passes. He was at 58.9 in that first year. I think we're going to see him to continue to improve each week, and it's a big game for them.
For the Lions, again, it still looks like they're going to win they're still in command in the NFC North. They're 9-3. They're still not. We're at December 10th, and the Detroit Lions are 9-3. Yes. This is uncharted waters for this franchise, being this good this late in the season. And again, when you're a good team, you dissect more of what is potentially wrong with that team. So this is a very different circumstance for Detroit. By the way, if the Lions win today, they're going to be favored. They're favored today on the road. They're going to be favored in 3 of their last 4 games anyway. They'll be a dog in Dallas, but basically everyone but San Francisco would be an underdog in Dallas at this point in the entire league. 2 games against Minnesota, a fun one next week. By the way, next week we got 3 Saturday games to break down on the show. So we'll have a lot of fun next week with that one on the Saturday bowl games as well. But that's an interesting one next week. Detroit and Denver. Ooh, that'll be a fun one. All right, let's go to New Orleans next. Things not going well for the Saints. Derek Carr, I'm stunned Derek Carr is playing in this game. He's basically the guy from SpongeBob who was just wrapped in bandages, right? Right, the guy with the glass bones at this point. I mean, he's trying to tough it out. I don't know if that's better for New Orleans or not. He is in. Carr's in. We know this already. Tickets are available through the secondary market for $4 in New Orleans today, which is pretty jarring for what that fan base is. They welcome in the worst team in the NFL, Carolina. New Orleans, even with all the issues they've had, even though the fact they're 5-7, they're 1 game behind Atlanta for the NFC South lead. Thank you, inept division. Saints are 5.5, Alex, 39, which is a market high in the total behind us. I want absolutely nothing to do with this game today.
And I am not going to try to convince you either of these NFC South matchups are good games. But I do like the Saints today. I laid the 5 with them, and I think that might be a little bit more of a fade against the Panthers. But the Saints, they have 7 losses on the year. 6 of those were from teams of 500 or better. The only other loss is to Tampa Bay, who is in their division. Always a tough game between those two. So the Saints are better than we think, and Carolina is exactly who we think they are. I think back to week 5 when the Saints were a 2.5-point favorite over the Patriots, and we didn't really know how bad New England was at that time. They won that game 34-0. So I don't think we need to overthink this. I think the Saints can get it done against this struggling Carolina Panthers team. It's only 5 points.
Carolina is going to end up with the first overall pick. One problem for them, they don't have their pick, as we know in the Bryce Young trade. So the Bears looking like they're going to have the number 1 pick for the second consecutive year, which would put them in a very interesting scenario of, do you take the quarterback? Do you take Maserati Marv? Do you trade the pick for more assets like you did this past year with Carolina? It's be an interesting scenario. And again, it's probably going to happen, especially with Matt Neverrett's New England Patriots winning their third game of the year on Thursday night against Sean's Steelers. In that one, first half gets the game over, by the way.
Working behind the glass with us today.
Yeah, well, hey, look.
We're not being nice to their teams.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, look, the Patriots are going to end up not even finishing last in their own division this year. So that's one thing. I don't know about the Steelers, but again, I need to stop saying things about the Steelers. I don't want to upset the big guy in the back. Steeler fan Chris Andrews. All right. Other NFC South game. Oh, by the way, our guy Vinny Magliulo with us in a few moments. Falcons and Bucks. So these two teams met in Tampa earlier in the year, and it was a turnover fest. Somehow that game landed 16-13 with Atlanta winning, and that game probably should have had about 45 points.
Yeah.
Turnovers in the red zone, turnovers that should have set up points that didn't set up points. Atlanta lost 3 fumbles in that game, but they still found a way. And if Atlanta wins this game today as a short home favorite, I'm a little surprised this number's come in this short on the Falcons. Tampa is healthier than they were a week ago, but even so, Alex, I laid a shorter money line price at $1.20 earlier in the week on the Falcons. 5-cent difference. I don't mind it at $1.25. The way you're grinning at me, I have a feeling we're opposite in this game. The way that you're looking at me with the way that this is going.
No, we're actually on the same side, and that scares me.
Oh, that's actually worse.
Because when we both bet on the Falcons, it's usually not good. And this division is so up in the air. Me being on both favorites makes me nervous as well. But I agree with you. Tampa Bay barely won that game against Carolina last week. They won by 3 points. The fact that they Falcons are only 1.5 favorite over the Bucks, I didn't think that was the right number there. And Atlanta's defense is pretty solid. So they're ranking 5th in yards per play, top 10 against the run and pass, 2nd in third down success rate. It wouldn't surprise me by any means if the Falcons find a way to lose this, but I think it is the right side.
1.5, 41.5, your total on this one. You know, the Falcons, if they win, they're 7-6. They would have at least a 1-game lead on New Orleans, depending on the result. If Tampa wins this game and New Orleans wins, we have the saddest 3-way tie in the history of the NFL at 6-7 going into the final 4 games of the season in the NFC South, where Atlanta's schedule is unbelievably manageable the rest of the way. Now, they do play 3 road games after today, but at Carolina, at the Bears, and the final week of the season in New Orleans, and then they played Indianapolis in their lone home game remaining on Christmas Eve. The Bucks, their schedule, again, I don't want to say it's manageable in comparison, but it's not too bad because you got a game against Carolina. They go to Green Bay next week. They'll be an underdog. They'll be a dog at home against Jacksonville. Pick to me against New Orleans, and then they'll be favored that final week against Carolina. The Saints, Giants, at the Rams, at the Bucks, and the Falcons. So all these schedules, I would say Tampa is the hardest of the 4, but the other 2 teams have manageable schedules. And someone gets to 9 wins, you win the division. That's as simple as it gets. Just get over 500 and get yourself into the postseason here this year.
I will say, too, Atlanta's pieced something together here since their bye week. They've won 2 in a row. They won against the Saints. They held them to 15 points and just gave up 8 to the Jets. And we've talked about them, their away-home split. They are much better at home, averaging 23 points a game compared to 14.7 on the road. So they need a win. Today's a great day to pick up an extra win in their division.
Let's hit one more game before our guy Vincenzo gets in here. Colts and the Bengals. How about some steam on the Bengals this morning? Even though it just got taken back down here behind us, all the way up to 3. Now just bet back to 2.5, Cincinnati laying it at home. This is a favorite flip. After the great performance by Jake Browning on Monday night, Bengals went from 2.5-point dogs on the opener here at the South Point to 1-point underdogs, and then the bettors have taken this thing up. I will say, if we touch 3 flat again, there are some 3 -15s and 3 minus, or excuse me, +3 -115. So juice on the dog, and +3 -20 again, juice on the dog again out there. I take a whole 3 with Indies feels pretty good here. Sell Jake Browning off of that performance feels like the right thing to do.
I agree. I think the line movement is a little aggressive here. I mean, he completed 32 of 37 passes for 345 yards, but the game before that against Pittsburgh was pretty much opposite. I think we'll get somewhere in the middle for Jake Browning in this one, but with so much respect on him and this huge line move, surprise, I like a Colts over. I went over this one. It is now moved up to 44.5. I think that's still good. The Colts scored 27 in 5 of their last 6. I mention it every week. Up tempo, second quickest in the league. And then their defense ranks 27th in points allowed. You could actually argue that Cincy's defense is even worse. So a lot of points in this game between these two.
It is, again, Indianapolis's defense has had their struggles. Colts won a dramatic one a week ago in Nashville in overtime, coming from behind, winning 31-28 in OT. If the playoffs started today, the Indianapolis Colts would not only be in the postseason, they would be the number 6 seed in the AFC right now. They were 5 at the beginning of the week, but because of Pittsburgh's loss earlier, they dipped a spot because Cleveland, of course, won that game in Indy, that ridiculous 39-38 game where Colts probably should have won that one. Zebras had an impact, to say the very least. All right, we're going to take a break. When we get back, Vinny Magliulo going to be on set. His laptop's already up there. Our guy Vincenzo joins us next. Sports by the Book, South Point Studio.
South Point offers all the types of entertainment you'd expect at a first-class Las Vegas resort. Did you know our 400-seat showroom is one of Las Vegas's top destinations for live entertainment? Enjoy live performances by classic Vegas entertainers, bands, and today's hottest comedians, plus a rock and dance floor. You can also enjoy live entertainment at the Grand View Lounge, where you'll feel all the vibes of old Las Vegas. Enjoy the music, and if you love to laugh, don't miss The Dirty at 12:30, our very own free comedy show, every Friday night at 12:30 a.m. in the Grand View Lounge. The Dirty is 100% free, so arrive early. Go to southpointcasino.com or call the box office at 77136 for today's performances at the showroom and the Grand View Lounge. When you're ready for your favorite cocktail, stop in and unwind at one of our 7 specialty lounges. There's a bar around every corner, because you're in Vegas, baby. South Point Casino has plenty of attractions for the whole family. Catch a movie. Our 16-screen movie theater includes 2 XD Extreme screens for the ultimate in viewing, sound, and luxury. After the show, treat the family to a variety of treats at our old-fashioned ice cream parlor, Kate's Corner. We scoop up a variety of creamy concoctions, including smoothies, hand-dipped cones, milkshakes, malts, sodas, and sundaes. At Kate's, there's something for everyone. And if you still got time to spare, our bowling center might be right up your alley. Voted Best of Las Vegas, it's a great place for friends and family fun. 64 lanes, a pro shop, snack bar, and arcade. And while the kids are bowling, you can play slots and sip on a drink in the Alley Cat Lounge while overlooking the lanes. For our more serious and professional bowlers, the South Point is also home to a separate tournament bowling plaza.
Welcome back in Sports by the Book. See, we have fun here
Cheer
on this
up.
program. We have fun. I'm
have
Jeff
to.
Parles, Alex White, Vinny Magliulo now on set. I will say this before we get to things, Vinny. I like a Parsons jersey today for Alex White. I'm very disappointed with the Bills playing probably for their season today that there's not a Tyler Bass jersey. I'm a little disappointed.
It's true.
A little
Well,
disappointed.
I think there may be an investment hint here on the part
Slightly.
of Alex.
Maybe a tell, as they would call
But
it.
I will tell you this. First of all, good morning. It's good to be with you.
Good
with you
morning,
both.
as
And you
always.
have to have fun doing this.
Well, I mean, if you're not,
having
what are we
fun,
doing here?
And here we are, 46 years. Wow. Still having fun doing this. But you mentioned the Bills. What if I told you that Chris and I were just talking, and we Chrissy repeated this like 3 times to me. The Bills Chiefs game is the second lowest handle game of the day.
Wow.
What?
Yes. The first is the Bucs Falcons. Now, that doesn't mean that nobody's betting it, and it doesn't mean that it's going to pick up. I mean, obviously, it's an afternoon game, but it kind of doesn't that surprise you?
Now, let's talk this through. Why do we think that's the case?
Well,
is it because people have a little bit of well, let's just go through this. Buffalo's on a bye last week, so we didn't see them. The last time we saw them was that epic game that they lost to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Kansas City, last time we saw them, they lost on prime time against Green Bay.
Yes.
They've struggled to score, as we know, this year. They have more games with less than 20 points this year than every single season put together with Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback. But that still is jarring because when the schedule came out, this week it was like, oh boy, we got ourselves arguably the best game in the AFC leading into arguably the best game in the NFC this year.
I can tell you this, that the handle is tremendous.
Phenomenal, right?
I mean, it's great business. It has been business all night. You know, the book here at South Point is open 24 hours. Obviously, the app and, the kiosks. But it's still, the counter is open as well. When, with the rodeo in town, it's very busy. It's a lot of volume and great business. But that's why I think he had to repeat. I had a look on my face like, what? Are you... Say that again. But it's true, and I think that'll change as we get, into the latter part of the morning. But certainly in the afternoon. I mean, there's no question that game. But for now, maybe the Pacheco injury has something to do with it. But both teams have injuries. I think people are trying to figure out these two teams.
I think you're right.
Right, Alex. I mean, every week for the past few seasons, you could always check mark the public would be on both of these teams. Well, of course, when they're playing each other, they would, pick a side and get involved, which I think they will this afternoon. But so far, no, it's surprising.
It's tough. Yeah. I kind of passed it too. I did tease the Bills up.
Okay, sure. Yeah, makes sense.
With the Ravens for one. But besides that, I didn't know what to do with it. Even the total is like, what are we going to get? More of a defensive battle, or could this turn into a shootout? You don't.
So historically, those games have gone over between those two teams, except for I don't remember if it was last year's regular season game or if it was the year before with the weather delay. One of those two games went under. I forget which one it was. The playoff game obviously was. Granted, the fun part about that playoff game was before the insanity of the last 2 minutes of regulation. If Allen throws an incomplete pass instead of a touchdown, that game goes under. As ridiculous as that is, trust me.
Good point.
I was on the over.
I was going to say you had a ticket. That's how you remember those. I was on the over
in that game for sure.
I
do want to bring one thing up on that game a little bit more. By the way, I think you, without even having a guess, I think you know what side I'm going to be on in that game, Alex. But The Bills are 6-6. The Chiefs are 8-4 here, Vinny. We're talking about going into the year. Now, again, 8-4 for Kansas City is basically for other teams a disappointing. It would be equivalent to having an underwater season. It's a disappointment for what those expectations are that Kansas City is 8-4. These are two of the top 4 power-rated teams in the NFL going into the season. And now, Vinny, how far has Buffalo dropped with this 6-6 start? And how far has Kansas City dropped, even though, yes, still leading the division, still 8-4, but not quite the team we anticipated them being?
Got Baltimore as the top AFC power-rated team.
Baltimore's what? Is Miami ahead of Kansas City now?
Miami and Kansas City are right about even in my power ratings. Yeah, I have them close to about maybe a half point difference.
Alex, what do you have?
I have Miami and Kansas City the same, actually, yes.
Yeah.
And Baltimore.
Again, this week I think we'll tell something, right? Too. I mean, Miami's 2 touchdown favorites. So tomorrow night and climbing. Actually, I mean that game went up from 13 to 14. So yeah, I mean, look, I think people are trying to figure out what to do with both of these teams. Now that said, they're going to figure it out, both the teams and the bettors. So it's not like that's going to remain that way. The other game the only game that's had less interest so far is it's the Panthers. I'm sorry, the Bucs and the Falcons.
Well, I was going to say the Panthers and the Saints. It wouldn't just be lack of betting betting attention, as we said earlier. The secondary market tickets today, $4 to get into the Superdome, Vinny.
$4?
$4.
Now in our business, $4 is $400, but you're talking four.
No, I'm talking like talking 1, 2, 3, 4. George Washington's
grocery dollars.
Yeah, grocery dollars.
That's $4 to get in.
Yeah.
Costs more to park.
I mean,
right?
It'd be definitely more for a hurricane on Bourbon Street. We know that.
So the other thing that Chris and we'll talk more, I know, when we get it next week, we start with bowls and everything, but one little observation with bowls. Chris did a little bit of math. 13 bowl games, right? So there's 39 bowl games outside of the playoffs.
Sure.
Only 13 games where the quarterback and the coach are still together.
Intact for both teams.
Yes. Which I may bet the under by the time some kickoffs come.
We don't even have the full opt-out list yet.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I would, if you made that line 10.5, I'd still go under.
Yeah, you might. Yeah.
You still got 3.5.
So anyway, just some sidebars there. Like I said, good business so far today, and now that the actives and inactives are out, folks are really stepping up.
So I want to keep rolling through our list of games.
Yeah.
Because I know you're always excited to talk about Zach Wilson playing quarterback, Vinny.
He's back.
He's back.
Again.
He's feeling like playing today.
Yeah.
But again, the market tells you things, okay? This opened 6.5 when we didn't know who was playing quarterback this week. Tim Boyle got cut. Trevor Siemian's the backup. Zach Wilson is starting.
Right.
And the bettors have taken this all the way down to 3 now on this game.
That is correct.
With Houston favored at MetLife. By the way, the weather is supposed to be dreadful. Wind, rain, everything. And also, too, this total again, we're talking about a Houston team with a shaky defense and a quarterback who is arguably having the best rookie season in the history of the NFL. And his total has been bopped down from 37 to 33.5 in part of that weather.
Lowest total on the board right now.
Since Thursday, Vinny.
Which we know what happened there.
Easiest over of the year,
yeah,
Vinny.
That's right. So I think, look, again, it's a take. It's a take of the number, right?
Sure.
And let's face it, it's particularly in the NFL, it's about numbers. And folks got more than 3 with weather. And you know what? I don't know if it's an assumption or probably more of a hope that this iteration of Zach Wilson is going to be better. But it's purely a take on the number, and that doesn't mean that there's not support in terms of money line action and teasers for the Texans, who've got some injuries too. Let's face it, particularly the wide receiver position. Tank Dell is done for the year. He was having a terrific year. He had a great preseason, and he had a good year. But look, when you look at the quarterback position, certainly the rookie C.J. Stroud is far and away much better. But I think people are again hoping and maybe anticipate. You could take your pick as to what Zach Wilson are going to see today.
I just have no idea what will happen in this game. The only thing I feel confident in is that the Jet defense will likely play well because that's what they do, other than the game against Miami, which really wasn't their fault, and the game against Buffalo, which the Jets could have played 18 quarters and they wouldn't have made up the margin in that game.
The thing about the Jet defense is it's just on the field.
Well, they're on the field
3
forever.
quarters, 80% of the time. So,
again, Vinny, we're talking about a team on offense that has 70% of their points on field goals this year, which is unfathomably bad. It's you're on pace to be the worst third down team in the history of the NFL. They're on pace for the least amount of touchdowns since the early 90s. Just an ineptitude that should not be possible in the game in 2023 has been reached by the Jets.
Jeff, all things are possible at MetLife Stadium.
Anything's in play. Hey, Tommy DeVito could be leading another victory.
That's right, tomorrow night.
I do want to, before we let you go back to work, I do want to touch on the Niners and the Seahawks, okay? Yeah. Because this is up to 14. It's 2 whole touchdowns now.
Yep.
For a Seahawk team that Geno Smith is still listed as questionable here.
Game time, yeah.
Game time decision questionable. So this, Vinny, I would say this move is baked in that Geno is not going to play, that if this is officially, hey, Geno is out, that maybe we see this touch 14.5 for a moment or two, but it's probably not going much higher because it's probably already baked in that lock is getting the start.
Well, look, yeah, I would say that. I mean, again, the game opened 12.5, and initially was bet down. I mean, it was, this is a quick turnaround for these two teams, and maybe a little bit of a, again, not necessarily a letdown spot by the big win by the Niners last week. But the fact of the matter is the Niners are healthy. I don't know if it's going to come back down or go. Going up wouldn't shock me either because it's an afternoon game. And again, these afternoon games, and there are 4 of them today, it really depends on how the morning goes because of the morning games being tied to them. So with that said, I think it really wouldn't surprise you either way. I mean, if it touches 14.5, pros will get involved with it, not necessarily the general public.
One last thing I need to ask you about. Shohei Ohtani, $700 million man.
Yes.
Goes to the Dodgers.
Yes.
10 years, $700 million.
That's correct.
It is pretty amazing. And now, look, the ridiculous part of this whole thing? I actually think it's a fair deal.
You think it's a fair deal?
For both sides. Well, for Ohtani, it's clearly a fair deal.
I'd do it for half the money, but go ahead.
I mean, I think some of us would do it for almost 10% of that. I mean, or 10% for that would be pretty good, in all honesty. Take that right now. 1% of that's pretty good. But, it's interesting because we always talk about it, and I know this is weird to take a detour to baseball.
No, it's not.
But because of the nature of this move, where there were all those ridiculous rumors that he was on the plane to Toronto and then it ended up being the guy from Shark Tank instead of Ohtani on that plane from Anaheim to Toronto. But Vinny, we talk about the Dodgers being the public team here in Las Vegas. How did you shift those futures numbers? And also, too, by the time this season starts, I would imagine, even if the Dodgers aren't the number 1 power-rated team in baseball, I think it's still pretty close with them in Atlanta. They're going to be the betting favorites the entire regular season.
Well, remember this. First of all, they're going to be favoring just about every game that they play.
Yeah,
and look, they've had success before Ohtani. And it's not – it's okay to deviate and detour a little bit because why? We always have to pay attention to this because somebody out there is. So yesterday – Chris moved the Dodgers down to 5-1 for the World Series. They took it. I think they're down to 4-1. And so people were taking it already with 5-1. The other part about it you have to remember is Walker Buehler's probably going to be back for them as well, which is, I think Walker Buehler's their best pitcher. So, but the way you lower the Dodgers, you've got to raise some of the other teams, right? Look at the Padres. Looks like the Padres, who a couple of years ago were these buyers and signing free agents and everything. It looks like I don't want to say they're cleaning house, but they're definitely shifting and they're losing.
You trade
you lose Soto, right?
You've got
to raise the Padres. Probably got to raise the Giants, right? Everybody else in the division. So, but look at what the D-backs did with what I think a bottom 10 payroll,
bottom 15, bottom 12 payroll in the World Series. I
think
swept the Dodgers right
Yeah.
out.
So, but that said, even looking at regular season wins, I mean, you're gonna instead of starting at 100, you're probably starting at 102 or 103 and going north of that even with them.
I was going to say, I mean, that team last year, I don't even think by Dodger standards, I thought that was a pretty average team.
Yeah.
And they still won over 100 games last year.
Now, he's probably, I don't think we're going to see
he won't pitch
Shohei Ohtani on the mound this year. But the fact of the matter is he's a terrific hitter, the lefty. You look at the rest of that lineup, and as I mentioned, with Walker Buehler coming back, and I'm sure the Dodgers are not done. And we always know this, too. Regardless of what they do in terms of deals or not, that farm system is terrific. And they just always seem to roll out arms. I mean, my whole life I remember that with the Dodgers.
A lot of pressure on them now.
Oh, yeah.
They've made it to the postseason how many times? And
I mean, their one title was in a year that probably shouldn't have even happened, that season, that 2020 season. So all I will say is, Vinny, there is no sense in projecting baseball because the playoffs are such a crapshoot, as we know.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're partying like it's 1977 and 1978 again, I guess I got to throw 81 in. It wouldn't shock me one bit.
Yeah, but 77 and 78 went to the
I understand
Yankees.
that. I understand that. I understand that.
By the way, the Bengals just went back to football. Bengals just went back to 3 here at South Point. We've got a toggler officially.
I guess I got to take the Colts now, Alex.
There you
Vinny, we'll let you go back to work.
All right.
As always.
Thank
Good
you,
job,
Vinny.
you two.
All right. Well,
Crew?
When we get back, we got a few more games to get to, including the one just down the road from us at Allegiant Stadium. That's next. Sports by the Book, South Point Studio.
We have 11 amazing restaurants featuring a wide variety for every price range and appetite. South Point's Garden Buffet has something for everyone at unbeatable prices. Or, if hunger strikes in the middle of the night, join us at Coronado Cafe. The American menu offers breakfast, lunch, or dinner 24 hours a day, plus a Chinese kitchen for authentic Chinese dishes from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. From steak and eggs to wonton soup, it's fast and friendly service 24/7. When you need a quick pick-me-up, you can find it at our state-of-the-art Starbucks just inside the main South Point entrance. Order ahead with the Starbucks app for easy mobile order pickups. Or enjoy your favorites in the relaxing dining area anytime, day or night. If you love Mexican food, Baja Miguel's has all of your south-of-the-border favorites. There are dozens of classics to choose from, like fajitas, ceviche, chimichangas, tacos, and more. And for spirit lovers, Baja's colorful non-smoking tequila bar is right outside. Or maybe you're in the mood for seafood. Big Sur Oyster Bar has fresh seafood prepared right before your eyes. Savor freshly shucked oysters, crab legs jambalaya, shrimp and lobster. Beers on tap and a selection of fine wines are perfect to pair with your seafood favorite. Whether lunch or dinner, you'll love this fun atmosphere, located just off the casino floor. Ready to shake things up? Step back in time and treat yourself to one of the oldest restaurant chains in the country. Steak and Shake, famous for original mouth-watering steak burgers and hand-dipped milkshakes in a variety of flavors. For some old-fashioned fun, try Steak and Shake.
Welcome back in. Sports by the Book is the show. South Point Studio, the site. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you have not hit that subscribe button, please hit the subscribe button. You get all the great content we do here at the studio right to you for free. Of course, our show, Punchlines with Frank Nicotero, hashtag Punch Frank Nicotero on Twitter if you're listening right now. And also the newest edition, Ralph Sirocco on Race Day Las Vegas, preceding our show on the weekends and getting your mornings ready to go with all the horse racing action across the country. Los Alamitos, Aqueduct, all the fun ones going in December.
And thank you to everybody who is watching our show at one of our 3 locations.
Yes.
Steiner's and Oasis here in Vegas.
Yes, and of course our friends over at Dom's Pizzeria in Trafford, Pennsylvania, as always. All right, let's get back into it. Just due north of here, Allegiant Stadium, the Raiders taking on the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings off the bye. The last time we saw Josh Dobbs, it was a struggle, a 12-10 loss to Chicago, 3 turnovers in that one. Also, the Raiders off a bye as well. Last time we saw them, they hopped out 14-0 on Kansas City and then got outscored 31-3 the rest of the game in a 14-point loss against the Chiefs at Allegiant. Alex, I like the Raiders. And, I'll say this with the Raiders. I still don't think they're particularly good. I think they've overachieved even with the amount of wins that they have. Antonio Pierce still gunning for that head coaching job. I don't know if he's shown enough yet. I know they won 2 games, but you beat the Giants and the Jets.
Yeah.
Okay. No, it doesn't move the needle for me enough. But Minnesota's in the playoff chase. This is a better team than those 2 teams they beat. Yes, even it is Josh Dobbs, who's a career backup, who's starting to look like he's coming back to earth. But I like Aiden O'Connell in this matchup. And I think for the perspective of the Vikings, and we've seen this with Minnesota with Flores, yes, they blitz like crazy, but if the game is close, they go into the shell. That's why they lost that game on Monday night. They went prevent against Justin Fields, which was just asinine, and they paid the price for it. But I think Minnesota will struggle moving the ball, even with getting Justin Jefferson back. The Raiders, I think, will be prepared. I like them +3. I like them outright. Win this game. Move to 6-7, which for this team, with everything that's happened this year, if they can finish around 500, that probably is enough to get Antonio Pierce this job permanently.
I like it. It's nice to see you on this side because you have judged the Raiders very toughly this season for good reason. But
yeah.
I had the Vikings -1. I think at this number with the move, it would only be a take for me with the Raiders. I was also looking at first half because in their 4 games with Antonio Pierce, the Raiders, they were up 24-0 against the Giants. The Jets were up 9-6.
Yeah, Jets
in
are
that
up
one.
at halftime in that one, yeah.
Raiders down just 1 against the Dolphins, and then they were tied with the Chiefs. So they come out strong, right? We know we can trust them for at least 2 quarters. I was looking at them +1.5 first half. I also like Josh Jacobs in this over 71.5 rushing yards. Antonio Pierce, he said it right from the beginning. They're going to get back to their run. Jacobs has 48% of all the Raiders touches, and he's gone over 72.5 in 3 of the last 4 games with Antonio Pierce stepping in as interim head coach. And those 3 games were all at home at Allegiant Stadium. So their offense is better at home. That's why I like your play as well with the 3 points against Minnesota here.
There are a ton of Viking fans here. I can tell you that just even being down on the Strip on Thursday, reports from friends down on Fremont Street as well. It wasn't just Laker purple and gold. It's been Viking purple and yellow this week as well. I've never been to the Twin Cities. I've only heard great things about them, but I would also want to get out of that weather in December to come to Vegas, even though we'll say it was 36 degrees today when we left the apartment. So
yes, it was very chilly.
It was a little chilly.
Speaking of the Lakers.
Yeah, please go for it.
No, we just got to bring up the Lakers. We talked about baseball a little bit. Talk about
Lakers win the in-season tournament, cover with ease last night in a 123-109 win. Did that total end up going under? What was the total? Went under? Thank you, Sean. Total went under in that one. First ever in-season tournament championship goes to one of the 2 best franchises to ever do it in the NBA, with the Lakers winning it here in Vegas last night. All right, moving along. Back to L.A., though, we go. Keep it with that. The Chargers welcome the Broncos in. Denver, their win streak snapped in the 22-17 loss in Houston a week ago. The Chargers set football back about 30 years, but still won the game last week against New England in the 6-0, just horrible, horrible watch. Chargers are 3 at home in this game, total 45. Alex, I like Denver in this game. Now, I don't know if I like them outright. I think I'll just take my 3, and if we land push, I'm okay with that. And they win outright. All right, so I gave up a little bit, but still got the win. This Charger team, offensively speaking, is now going on since that 41-38 game, which was, I think, more to do with Detroit's defense, more so than anything. Chargers averaged 6 yards a play in that game. Pretty good. Okay? Going back to that Monday night game, starting with the Jet game. Yes, they won that game by 21 points, but they averaged 3 yards a play in that game and got held under 200 yards. They won that game because the Jets stink, not that the Chargers did enough on the offensive side of the ball. Against Green Bay, a game that, quite frankly, they should have won. They lost that game 23-20. They were better offensively in that game, 6.4 yards per play. But they were 0 for 2 on 4th down. They were negative in the turnover battle. Not good enough in that game. The Raven game, if you look at the stat sheet, the Chargers averaged 4 yards a play again. Not good. That's not good enough to get it done, even though we're given plenty of chances against that Raven team. And then last week, yes, they won. They won. I get it. But 6 points, 4 yards a play, outgained by New England as well. This Charger offense, and I like Justin Herbert. He is clearly one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But you got to start showing me something. And especially where I thought it was on Joe Lombardi, their offensive coordinator, just calling too many plays within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. Kellen Moore is supposed to be this offensive genius, and this offense is nowhere near as good as it should be. If it doesn't come against Denver today, again, they lose, they're done. They're 5-8. You're out of there. See you later at 8 losses in the AFC. But in the end, Denver's got the better coaching staff. And that's why I like Denver more so than anything.
Yeah, I was really going to lean on you for this one. I haven't bet on these two teams at all this year, really. But you mentioned it, Chargers, they have Justin Herbert, the better quarterback. Broncos clearly have the better coach. So I think I would lean to the Broncos here. And, I mean, their 5-game win streak, they beat 5 good teams. The Packers, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Vikings, and the Browns. Then it was a great spot last week with the Texans. Texans won and covered in that one. But I think the Broncos get back on track here. Chargers defense is not good either. So I would say this is kind of an ugly game. I passed on this one, though.
Denver, by the way, if the Chargers win and both teams are at 6-7, look, you can still be in this race at 6-7 because of the way that all these teams have massive flaws that are in the wild card race. But for the Broncos, this is an important game. To win on the road, you're going to be a dog next week against the Lions. This thing could spiral the other way after that big win streak to get themselves back into the race from 1-5 to 6-5. All right, back to Kansas City we go. Alex, you refresh everyone on what you played here with this. Chiefs 1.5, total 49 against Buffalo.
I teased the Bills up to 8.5. I didn't love it. It's funny, Vinny came in here to say it was one of the least bet games because I felt that too. You don't really know what we're going to get from either of these teams. The Chiefs have been shockingly unexplosive this year. And in the last few weeks, they've really started slow, and they got back in that game against the Raiders, but they couldn't manage to do that against the Packers. And Buffalo has gotten a little bit on the right track now. So we'll see what we're going to get here. I'm interested to hear your side, even though I think I know.
What's your guess?
Chiefs.
You knew
minus 1.5.
Minus 120 money line is what I ended up taking on Kansas City. This has been a very weird week for both of these teams. Isaiah Pacheco's not going to play. That is a big deal.
Yes.
For Kansas City, and I acknowledge that. But I just have to wonder, with everything that came out with Sean McDermott this week, with a very, let's just say, a very stupid comparison. If you haven't read Tyler Dunn's articles, go ahead and read it. And then there's some motivational tactics that were questionable, to put it politely, from McDermott. I just wonder if he's lost that team, even before this stuff came to light, where you've seen Buffalo, based off of a lot of metrics out there, they're near the tops in EPA. They're, even with the turnover problems for Allen, they still grade out as one of the 3 best offenses in the NFL. And here you are at 6-6, where if you lose this game, you're 6-7 and have to basically play for your season the rest of the way and win out in order to even have a shot to make the playoffs. They are capable of winning out. They're still very talented. But for Kansas City, and if KC had won last week, I may feel a little bit differently. But it's kind of the way I felt going into that Raider game, where at some point that the light's going to turn back on. Even without Pacheco today, that light at some point is going to turn back on for Mahomes and turn back on for that offense. And it wouldn't shock me if it comes in a game where this is a legitimate rivalry. Buffalo's owned the regular season games. Kansas City's won the games that are important in the postseason. But I think it flips today. I like KC. Laid the $1.20 on the money line. All right, the Sunday night, your jersey's there. It's pretty funny. We again, you've hosted shows now with me for 14 weeks. You know my patterns here. I'm off my pattern on this game. I bet Dallas.
Wow.
Yeah, I bet Dallas. I am concerned about Jalen Hurts' health. Now, I'm not like David Carr, who said, hey, you should put him on the bench until he's healthy, which was one of the most ridiculous things I think I've ever heard said on television, which is saying something. But at 3.5 here, and there's some 3 in the market now. There's even mostly 3.5 even on Dallas. If you like Philly, the best number in the world is behind us on the Eagles at plus 3.5 minus 110. But if this thing gets back to 3, I'm gonna bet some more on Dallas. They're dominant at home. They're coming off the closest home game they played all year in that win against Seattle. And for the Eagles, I think, and again, I still think they're clearly one of the 3 best teams in the NFC. They're one of the 5 best teams in the NFL. But this is a bad spot after playing against San Francisco. And also, too, that defense has been on the field basically the whole game the last 3 weeks. Not a good matchup for them this week. And Dallas should have beat them the first time. So I like the Cowboys today against the Eagles.
I agree, and my best bet is actually Dallas team total over 27.5.
Very nice.
I'm confident in this team at home, averaging 41 points a game. And then you brought up Eagles defense. They've been giving up yards over 400 in 4 of their last 5. So I'm not confident in what we're going to get from the Eagles. I think this could turn into a shootout. I do like the over, but I'm more confident that we're going to get points from this Cowboys team. Eagles do get Dallas Goedert back, which is huge for them. So I think this could be a little bit more competitive, but I'm with you. If I can get a 3, I'll probably lay the 3 with the Cowboys too, because the revenge factor, they should have won that first one. They lost 28-23. We're going to see a very motivated Cowboys team.
Yeah, for Dallas, this is an important game because if they win tonight, it kind of felt like everyone say, this is a foregone conclusion. Philadelphia's going to win this division. They've won all these close games. If the Dallas Cowboys win tonight, the Dallas Cowboys will enter the week before Christmas in first place in the NFC East. Now, granted, Dallas is scheduled the rest of the way, other than that final week against Washington, who we know stinks, at Buffalo, at Dallas, Detroit, including tonight against Philadelphia. So, very difficult. But, I mean, look, it is all there for the taking for Dallas to get the number 2 seed and win a division. Philly's schedule softens pretty considerably after this game. They go to Seattle on the Monday night, and then they play the Giants twice in Arizona.
That's nice.
So it softens considerably after next week.
Yeah, their
for
last
sure.
6 games have been insane. So,
all right, real quick here for tomorrow, 2 games, and we'll break it down on the show fully tomorrow at 3:00. Dolphins are 14 against Tennessee. Packers are 6.5 against the Giants. All I'm going to say is my second favorite play of the week is the Giants with Tommy DeVito and company. Chris, I like Chris's theory on this makes sense. You go from a home dog to a road favorite, and forget going from like a 2-point home dog to like a 2-point road favorite. Green Bay's going from 5 to 6.5 the other way. That is gigantic. And the Packers have played much better recently, of course, but I do like the Giants to cover the number. I don't think they'll get there outright, but I do like the Giants plus 6.5. And if it's 7, I'll go back and absolutely take some more of it.
I like it too. I agree with you. My numbers say to take the points, so not saying Giants upset them. I believe in this Green Bay team now. I think they are legit. Good. But taking the points here with the Giants at home, I think that's the right move. I also like the first game, Titans-Dolphins over 23.5 first half, because the Dolphins at home, and they come out strong. They're averaging 17.8 points in the first half. So looked at that over a little bit. I feel more confident in the first half, though.
Look, as we know, Miami torches bad teams that are underwater right now or at 500, the teams they've played in Miami this year. The 50-point win against Denver. They beat the Giants by 15. They beat Carolina by 21. They beat the Patriots by 2 touchdowns. The Raiders, they only beat by a touchdown. It's actually the closest game they've played. Actually, that is the closest game they've played at home this year. Forget the opponents. That's the closest game they've played at home, period, is a 1-score game. Now, granted, they may go the whole season with only playing one team that ends up over 500 at home, and that's Dallas, depending on what happens with Buffalo down the stretch here. All right, that's all the time we have. Get to your South Point app. Get your bets in before the games get going at the top of the hour. Shout out to the crew as always, Sean, Jerry, and our guy Matt Neverett doing a great job back there. Shout out to Ann and Ryan, who both have well-deserved days off today on this Sunday. Alex, we'll see you again tomorrow at 3. Double dip on Monday Night Football. Shout out to Vinny as well for joining us for his usual segment. For Alex White, I'm Jeff Parles. We'll see you again tomorrow. Sports by the Book, South Point Studio.